So we are thrilled to welcome our presenter for today, Taylor Spinnato from Canadian Mental Health Association. In a moment, I will turn it over to her and she will begin her presentation on supporting employee wellness. So the order of the presentation today, we're going to turn it over to Taylor in a minute. And then at the end of the presentation, we're going to have an open question and answer period. So if you think of a question as she's going through her presentation, I encourage you to either put that in the chat box right away or make a mental note to ask it at the end. And we'll be sure to leave time for questions at the end. So without further ado, Taylor, I'm going to turn it over to you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, of course, so you can share yours.
Great. Thank you so much. Okay, I'm going to just start sharing my screen and making sure that part works. And can I just get a thumbs up if you can see that okay? Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so my name is Taylor Spinnato, and I am from Canadian Mental Health, which has already been said. And I am the mental health promoter there at CMHA. So just a quick overview, my job really is to go out into the community, into the schools, different workplaces to really talk about mental health. And especially I've noticed just over the last 2 years with COVID, I have had more and more workplaces really reach out for support, support for managers, and also support for employees as well. So I'm going to do an overall mental health in the workplace. This is a presentation that I offer to many of our workplaces in the community. There are some videos in this presentation. So sometimes those can be a little bit longer, and I know I just want to be mindful of everyone's time. So what I've decided to do is some of the videos, I am going to just explain them to you, but I will make sure that this presentation is available for everyone who has participated today so that you can watch the videos at a later date. I just want to be mindful of time for everybody. So just getting started, I'm going to do a quick overview of our mental health. And so I know that everyone here comes from different backgrounds. So just want to make sure that we have a really good understanding of what mental health is. And I know sometimes people kind of laugh because they assume, oh, we know what that is. But oftentimes I hear people really kind of conflict the two terms of mental illness and mental health. So when we're talking about mental health, every single person that's in this call right now has it, okay? And it's our mental well-being, it's how you're feeling and how we really can cope with day-to-day life. But it is so dynamic, right? So this morning we could have woken up and just not have a good day, right? We're struggling with our mental health, but maybe later in the day, something good happens and our mental well-being changes. So it really can change moment from moment, day to day, month to month, and year to year. This is really important for us to really understand, especially in a workplace, that, people are going through a lot of stresses. And so they can really move back and forth on this line here from being mentally well to being mentally unwell. When we talk about mental illness, it's different from mental health. So like I said, we all have mental health. We don't all have mental illness. So mental illness is actual health problems, and they affect the way that people think, the way that they act, the way that they interact with others. So they're really going to affect people's thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. And 1 in 5 Canadians will personally experience a mental illness in their lifetime. So it is pretty prevalent and important that we do really acknowledge that and that we talk more openly about mental illness. So I like to just show this chart just so that we can wrap our head around really the differences between mental health and mental illness. So somebody who might be on the bottom portion of this chart here, somebody who is experiencing poor mental health, that doesn't mean that they have a mental illness. So if you see in that blue box in the right bottom corner, it's possible to experience poor mental health without actually having a mental illness. And the same goes for the top part of this portion of this chart here. So somebody who has a mental illness can still have good mental health. So it's really just changing the way we think about mental health and mental illness so we can understand it better, especially when we are in a workplace. We want to understand these terms so that when we're talking about them correctly and we're understanding those who might be struggling. Okay, so these are just a couple of stats just to, again, understand the stigma that still exists within our community when we're talking about mental health and mental illness. But 75% of mental illnesses begin between the ages of 15 and 24. 20% of Canadians have a mental illness, but 60% of those who are living with a mental illness will not seek help because they have that fear of being labeled. And that really exists within our workplaces. Someone might be scared to open up that they're struggling because they don't want that label, especially, not in their private life, but especially not at work. So I'm going to just quickly get into a couple of myths that I commonly hear about mental health. Again, we really want to understand mental health and the stigma that exists so that we can try to decrease that in our workplace. That really promotes a more positive environment when we openly talk about mental health and we understand it a lot better. So a lot of times I hear that people don't really think that mental health or mental illness is that common. Some people struggle with it, but people might not think that it's very common in our community, and that's false. 1 in 5 people will experience mental health issue, and it's actually more common than type 2 diabetes and heart disease. But, if you're in the grocery store, it'd be less likely for someone to come up to you and maybe say, I'm struggling with depression. They might tell you, I have diabetes and be really open about that. But we don't really have that conversation about mental health. Another myth I hear is that people with mental illnesses are violent or dangerous. Okay, so in all reality, those who are struggling with their mental illness, they are more likely to be victims of violence themselves. And we see this really play up when we watch media, when we watch TV videos, things like that. They really try to depict somebody who's struggling with their mental illness as violent and dangerous. The last one, which I think probably I hear the most, is that if you have people with a mental illness will never get better. Okay, again, it's not the truth. While most mental illnesses can be chronic, just like physical health conditions, there are so many effective treatments that can help with recovery from a mental illness. So just because someone's diagnosed doesn't mean that they can't reach that recovery stage. Okay, so I'm going to dive a little bit more now that we have that kind of deeper understanding of mental health and the differences between mental health and mental illness is understanding mental health in the workplace. So in any given week, more than 1 million Canadians will be absent from work because they are struggling with their mental health. When I read that, I think it's pretty shocking. And I also think that stat has increased with COVID. So again, that 1 in 5 people in the workplace will experience mental health condition, but really the lack of awareness of mental health and the stigma causes a really big barrier. So people with mental illness in a workplace often conceal their illnesses because they are scared of that discrimination, and they have that fear that they might lose their job if they come out that they are struggling. So why is mental health hidden at work? It's that fear piece that I talked about. They don't want to lose their employer's respect. They don't want to lose their job. They're scared that they might not be promoted. They're going to be shamed by their coworkers or be isolated by others. They might be scared to ask for that accommodation piece from their manager or whoever it might be. They're also scared that their long-term career goals might be affected. So, if I come to work and I tell my manager I'm struggling, I might not be promoted or my career goals might be affected. It's also just scary to admit to an illness in general, right? Physical or mental. It can be very challenging to admit that you are struggling. So we need to create a more positive environment so that employees can open up about their mental health. So this was actually taken from the mental health profile here in Lambton County from 2018. And it looks at the barriers that are impacting local workforce participation. So again, looks at, physical health, but also looks at mental health. So 65% of these individuals agree that their employer promotes positive mental health in the workplace, and 54% are comfortable talking to their employer about mental health. So those are good, but not where we really want them at, right? We want to learn how to create a more positive work environment so we can increase these stats. Because if only 54% of employees are talking to their employer about mental health, I think that's pretty low. And we do really need to work on increasing that. So I won't get into every single mental illness, but one that really stands out in a workplace is depression. It is the leading cause of lost work productivity, sick leave, and early retirement. We do see that there's a lot of people who are struggling with depression, and especially too in our where we live, right? We have lovely winters. And so, in the winter, we do normally see that dip in individuals struggling a little bit more with depression because, we don't have that sunshine that we were talking about before I started. We don't have the ability to maybe get out for a walk as we normally would. So we do really see high levels of depression. So this is a really great chart that just kind of helps us understand what an employee might be feeling, but how it looks to us if they're struggling with depression. So if you're struggling with depression, you would have those feelings of sadness. You might kind of lose interest in work or social activities. A lot of times going to have that difficulty concentrating, might be more forgetful, can't make decisions. You're having trouble sleeping or sleeping too much. But to an employer, this might look a little bit different. We might see that the employer is putting things off, that they just seem like they don't really care. They might be procrastinating. They're often late to work. They're having more maybe accidents at work. They don't have that confidence that they used to. They're really, really low in their motivation. And sometimes we might even see that they have a change in their appearance. So this, again, it just kind of helps you put into perspective what the individual that actually has depression is struggling with, what they're feeling, and what it might look like to you. So sometimes we might not think depression automatically. If somebody is being or having procrastination, maybe they're showing up to work late, we might not link that to mental health. And then that might not cause us to ask them if they're struggling or have that open conversation, because we are not thinking that it's depression. So again, it's just kind of changing that mindset to know that people are struggling, and it's really helpful to just ask and have an open conversation. So I'm going to play this video. It's shorter, it's 2 minutes. And these are just some individuals in the workplace who are struggling with their mental health and just kind of describing how they felt at work when they were struggling. I'm going to just stop sharing my screen for one moment so I can make sure that the audio works here.
I think I was still trying to laugh and smile with people because you didn't want people to know that you were not feeling well. And I did everything that I was supposed to do, basically, I think. But you put up, I don't even know how to explain it. It's just something you work with. It's just, okay, I have to do this and this is what I do. So I go into work and I do what I have to do. If I make an error, I found it. I never got in trouble. But the focusing was not there. The communication was not there. You're not in a bubble basically, but you're just within yourself. That's how I can basically describe it.
The ability to own if I have made a mistake is extremely difficult for me. And partly because I have the sense I have to be better than everybody else because I have this condition and because I have to push through so much that there's an expectation that I actually function at a higher level than other people.
I felt very stressed, very frustrated. I felt like my manager doesn't like me. Everybody's picking on me, and I was getting angry inside me, feeling kind of screaming at everything out. And I said, no, this is not me. It's just the anxiety that's doing it. But you feel that way because of the anxiety and the mental health you have.
When I do feel so full of self-doubt that I can't speak up, even if I have an idea, I won't share it. Or in the context of work, if I'm working on a report or developing content, or I'll procrastinate because I just won't trust what I have to say or how I'm interpreting things is correct or good enough.
My boss has benefited from me trying to hide my mental health challenges by overworking myself. But here's where the death would have come in, because I'd go 3 days no sleep. I'd have people in satellite sites across Ontario and Quebec that I'm double checking their work because there's no confidence. And so that kind of hamster on the wheel kind of approach eventually would be what led to them finding me either one morning at home or in the office over my desk.
Okay. So I like to just show that video because I don't know if anyone could see at the bottom. It showed each of the employees' title and where they worked, and or not where they worked, sorry, what their title, what the job title was. And you could just see that that mental health really affects everyone. There was actually a psychotherapist that was talking, the lady that was speaking. So it does really affect everybody. And, just as employers, just being mindful that just because somebody might be in a certain position doesn't put them at lower risk for struggling with their mental health. So how could you tell if somebody is struggling? So I always just like to say for this slide that these are pretty textbook things that we do see with individuals when they are struggling, but just be mindful that these are just some of the ways that someone might show you that they're struggling. Other people, might really be good at hiding that they are struggling. So important to check in, even if you aren't seeing some of these signs. But normally what we will see is change in appetite and weight, too much, too little sleep. So those things might be hard, as an employer to notice, but maybe friends or family are saying that these things are happening. A loss of interest in their work. That's one of the main things that we will see, and that withdrawal, right? So maybe they are coming to social events for work and now they're starting to kind of withdraw from those things. They might be saying or telling you that they're feeling hopelessness, worthless, or having that really excessive guilt. Difficulty concentrating is what we're going to see mainly in the workplace. Crying easily. So you might say, I'm just checking in to make sure that you're okay. And they might break down in those tears because they've kind of hit that breaking point. They might share that they do have thoughts of suicide. And a lot of times we see that they kind of are losing touch with reality. So if you noticed that individual in the video said, I felt like my manager hates me. Right. So that probably wasn't the reality. And maybe the manager wasn't doing anything that would say that, but that anxiety that person is feeling, kind of makes them lose touch with the reality around them. So what can we do if someone is struggling at work, and how can you support them? So looking for those signs that I just talked about, but making it really clear that you want to listen and help without judgment. It's really hard, but we do really need to work on removing that layer of judgment. Ask how you can help. So, it's not always helpful to say, we can do X, Y, and Z. Sometimes letting the person talk themselves and tell you how they would like the help. Never ignore it and just hope that it will go away. Be very open-minded and be a supportive ear. Just remember, you're not a therapist, but being there to be an active listener is really, really important. Encourage them to seek professional help. So at the end of the presentation, I will give you a long list of all the local resources that we have in the area that people are able to reach out for support. Of course, if you think there is that immediate danger, never leave them alone. There is lots of crisis services and crisis lines within our community, and CMHA has one that I will talk a little bit about at the end, but making sure also that you are checking in with how the person is doing, staying in touch the best that you can. This is just a quote that I always like to show and kind of makes me think when we talk about listening and how important it is. Sometimes it seems so simple, but it's really important in creating a more positive work environment. So it says, this kind of sensitive, active listening is exceedingly rare in our lives. We think that we listen, but rarely do we listen with real understanding and true empathy. Yet listening of this very special kind is one of the most potent forces of change that I know. So just putting things into perspective, that of course we want to do our best to create this positive work environment, but one of the really key parts of that is listening, and is just asking the question of, how are you doing? And I'm here to listen if you want to talk. Okay, so how can we promote a more positive mental health in the workplace? So again, just another video. This video is a little bit longer, so I'm going to probably cut it at the end, just again, being mindful of time. And I know normally this presentation brings up lots of questions, so I want to give a fair amount of time for that. So let's see if this one will work for us. Doesn't matter. Of course, we always get lovely ads. Oh, we got 2 this time.
Where you work? What's it like to work where you work? School, somewhere else? Busy, right? Everybody being asked to do more with less. Hands up who gets their work email on a device at home. Hands up who sleeps in the same room as that device. Hands up who works evenings and weekends just to do more work the next day. Hands up who sometimes wakes up in the night, thinks about work, can't switch off, speaks to the phone before their family in the morning. Yeah, early signs of stress, okay, sorry to tell you. Hands up who is so busy they have their breakfast on the toilet. No? Good. Just my brother-in-law then. That's reassuring. But most of the things that I talked about are common. It's the new norm. Before we leave the house in the morning, our rucksack is half full. It's no surprise then that the third to half of us will experience some kind of stress, anxiety, and depression during our working lives. Those conditions are common, and they are responsible for 30% more absence than anything else, including musculoskeletal and physical injury. 30% more. And yet we struggle we struggle on. See, I review workplaces and how they support people.
Sorry, I'm just going to pause it. I know I just see in the chat that okay, it's pretty low. Okay. You know what, just for being mindful of everyone, and I want to make sure that everyone can hear it, because I think the volume is all the way up, and it's up on my computer as well. So I can explain the video, and then I can offer the video for everybody to watch at a later time, if that's okay. I want you to be able to hear it, and I'm just hearing that some people cannot. So, okay. Okay, perfect. I was just reading the chat there. Okay. So really in that video, it's a really, really great TED Talk. His name is Tom, and he really just gets into talking a little bit more about leadership and creating a positive mental health in the workplace. And how, again, just asking the questions is really, really important when it comes to managers and executive team leadership, is making time out of any meeting to really set aside some time to talk about our mental health. If we create that environment, it's more likely that employees will open up about their mental health, right? The other thing is, being mindful of how you talk about mental health. If you do in the workplace at all, if somebody is coming in and maybe has that attitude that they don't think it really matters, then that employee is less likely to approach you when they are struggling with their own mental health. So he talks a lot about creating that positive work environment, which I will get into as well. But again, I'll just make sure that it can be shared with everybody, so that you can have some access and watch it on your own time. So I'm gonna just share some slides on some different ways of creating that more positive workplace space. So creating positive relationships with staff through regular communication channels and team building exercises is really, really important. Really creating that and making that a priority, really, and research has shown that it really does work in creating a more positive workplace environment. So this is just an actual quote. And again, this is from the mental health profile of Lambton County. Quotes from individuals within our community who are talking about having this regular communication. So it says, at my place of work, there is already such a strong feeling of positivity and inclusion. We have monthly staff meetings, regular conversations with our managers, effortless accommodations for weekly group and appointments. So a lot of times it's just getting feedback from staff and seeing what works best for them. I have a manager meeting every week, just to give you an example. And with my manager, we don't talk about work. So right when we log in, we just talk about our weekend, we do a check-in and kind of just brief on what went on during the week. We try not to talk about work, and just, again, creating that really good relationship so that we can be more open if you are struggling, right? So I'm more likely to approach my manager because I can see that she cares about my mental health and how I'm feeling. The next tip here is increasing awareness of mental health issues and really encouraging employees to make sure that they're taking care of their mental health. So this can be things like informational workshops. So this is often what I do. So I have a lot of times with workplaces, I give a presentation to the leadership team, and then next they allow me to come in and speak with staff. We also do different training at CMHA, so we can offer things like safe talk for a lot of the employees or any of the leadership team, assist training, mental health first aid. These are things that you might have heard of before. So I have lots of community agencies who reach out and would like their staff trained in these things. And that really does show staff that you care about mental health and the mental health of the employees and the agency as a whole. So you could host some informational workshops. Also promoting awareness days is really, really important, and allowing them to take time for personal development courses. So again, this is just a quote here from a community member that says, provide more professional development on personal mental health, as well as supporting coworkers with mental illness. The next tip here is to provide more tangible support for employees. Employers, should employees need help with their mental health issues. So just treating staff with respect, making sure that staff know if they are going through something, that they can feel supported, and that there's no threat to anything, their job or anything like that, if they need to take a day off or a break to deal with some of the problems that they might be going through. So again, just allowing to have that really great communication to let staff know that if they are struggling, that there is support for them, but also if they do need to take that day off or that break, that you are supportive of that. Again, this looks different for every employer, but just to let them know that you are supporting them if they are struggling. Another tip here is having messaging for employees on of the employability of those who deal with mental health issues. So employers might hold back promotions from someone with a mental illness. So more education and awareness that a person with a mental illness can still contribute to the workplace and be successful. So again, all of these, as you can see, are really rooted in that communication and having open communication with staff. I just want to get into talking a little bit more about developing a culture of safety. And there's a video in this part, so fingers crossed that it does work for everyone for the audio. Just let me know if it doesn't. So it's just coming up on the next couple of slides here. So developing a culture of safety. So when we have a psychological safety at work and a safe culture, it really promotes mental health through self-care, promotes taking breaks, that peer-to-peer encouragement and support. It promotes knowledge and celebrating differences and increases our comfort and confidentiality in discussing any health issues, including our mental health. So I'm just going to get into the video, and it explains a little bit more about psychological and social support.
Think of your workplace. Have you ever noticed a change in the way someone behaved? Perhaps they started coming in later, or maybe they were missing meetings or deadlines when normally they're on time with these type of things. What did you do in that situation? Did you speak to them about what you saw? Maybe that person was you, and maybe you were worried what others would think of you. Did you feel supported? Let's look at an example. This is Eileen. Eileen has been a bit more quiet and keeping to herself lately. This is not typical of her. She has also been coming in late to work. Her supervisor, Marco, is becoming concerned about the changes he sees. Marco takes Eileen aside and says, "You don't seem to be yourself lately. How is everything going?" Eileen explains that her partner has recently been injured and can't work. She's been feeling anxious about her family and is making her feel distracted at work. Since her partner is injured, she also has had double the responsibilities at home. Eileen now has to get her son to childcare before and after school, which is why she has been showing up late. Her supervisor had no idea this was going on with Eileen. As a supervisor, he can thank her for explaining her situation, which will help him to support her better, while still ensuring that she's able to keep her work on track. When we talk about psychological and social support, we're talking about the level of trust and connections that exist in a workplace. It also refers to the level of help and assistance provided by others while performing tasks. As a supervisor, there are many things you can do to support your staff. You can suggest workplace employee assistance programs, or EAP, that can help during times of need. There are also other counseling services in the community that you can recommend. Other options include creating a stay-at-work plan that can accommodate your employees' needs. As an employee, be sure to let your supervisor know that you're going through a difficult time. Even if you don't want to share details, letting them know that you require support or flexibility to get through a difficult time can be helpful. They might be able to give you the flexibility you need to get through a hard time. So what is one way that you can promote psychological and social support in your workplace today? Psychological and social support is one of 13 factors of psychological health and safety in the workplace. Learn more at mentalhealthcommission.ca/national standard. For more resources for your workplace, check out havethattalk.ca. Developed in collaboration by Ottawa Public Health and the Mental Health Commission of Canada, with content.
Okay, so that video kind of overlaps what that TED Talk talks about. And he also gives, two examples of one employee who is not supported in a workplace that does not have psychological support in place. And another example of an individual who feels very supported, has that stay at work plan, and kind of just shows you how different it really can be when we do set up this support for employees and show that we, welcome an open conversation about mental health, it can really change the trajectory of an employee and how they do in the workplace, right? So somebody who doesn't feel supported, they might go off work and may never return. Right? Somebody who feels supported maybe takes those couple of days or whatever they need. They feel supported. They know they can have that open conversation with their manager and they can return to work safely and continue to feel supported. So again, in that safe talk or in that talk, he talks a lot more about that as well. So how can we increase our accommodations at work to create a more of that health promotion, more of that mental health in the workplace? So again, these are suggestions that aren't always possible in every workplace. So I do acknowledge that, but maybe it's something that can be explored. So flexible scheduling definitely does help, create that more positive workplace environment, having the conversation with employees to see what works best for them. Obviously, we have a job to do and there are things to accomplish, but we do want to work with the employee to understand what flexible scheduling could help them. Maybe there is a change in supervision or a change in management that you can have a conversation about. Maybe it's their job duties that are causing them a lot of stress. So sitting down and maybe reviewing some of those job duties. Maybe there is, a particular one that's causing a lot of stress that maybe a manager can now take on or somebody from another team can help with. Workspace and location really, really impacts mental health. And this is a hard one because, we don't always get to pick the desk that we sit at, but a lot of times I know too at CMHA, we kind of just help with staff to see, what would make your space more work friendly, what can help you, it might just be a simple thing like a lamp on the desk, a picture on the wall. Sometimes they seem very silly, but it just having that open conversation with staff to say, what can make this feel like a more positive environment around you? There's a lot of research that goes into just showing that how our environment plays such a big impact in our mental health. And so if we're in an environment that doesn't feel great, that productivity might decrease. And again, they might struggle more with their mental health. So I know that, we have a lot of focus on employee and creating that positive work environment, but one of the most important too is for leadership and for the employer to take care of their own mental health. If, a manager is not taking care of their own mental health, how can they kind of preach to other staff that they should be doing that? So I just wanted to go through some tips for taking care of your own mental health. And these are things that you can bring forth to staff as well. But this is just another quote here that mental well-being is just as important as physical well-being. And you need to maintain both to really stay fit and healthy. So a lot of times we focus so much on our physical health, which is very important. Mental health and physical health are so intertwined, but we don't always prioritize taking time to work on our mental well-being. So a really good exercise is just to kind of write down some things on what you do for your own self-care. These are different for everybody. And maybe this is an exercise that staff can do together. So, sleep, that's a hard one. Actually, before I worked at CMHA, I was a sleep technologist, and just the amount of people that struggle with their sleep, it is so difficult. And I've struggled with my sleep myself. But again, just kind of decreasing social media, news, being on your phone, things like that, things that we hear constantly that really do work, but sometimes it's hard for us to get away from our devices. Enjoying some sunshine. Maybe you like to draw or write. Maybe have a cat or a pet or something like that. Again, those are really good stress relievers. Sometimes when I talk about these things, people laugh because they seem so simple, but do we actually do this every day? Do we take 30 minutes to actually take time for self-care? So it's different for everybody, but making a list and just kind of reflecting on what brings you happiness, or if you are stressed and anxious, what you do to manage those feelings. Okay. So again, this is just going back to kind of self-care, but making sure that that you are talking about the way you feel. Again, making it an open conversation with staff, identifying triggers, what are things that cause you more stress, making sure you're taking time to do something that you enjoy, taking time to relax, making a plan to stay well. So in that video, they talked about a stay at work plan. So just some things that you can work through. What will help staff feel supported, and if they do need to leave work, how can they return safely? Think about what helps you when you start to feel overwhelmed. Go back to that reflection that you made of self-care tips, and remember to be kind to yourself. We are all human. We are all going to struggle with our mental health, and so we need to really remember that and humanize it a bit, because I think sometimes when we're especially in a corporate space, we forget that we all are human, and we all do struggle. Okay. Sorry, I just saw a chat that just popped up, so I got distracted. Okay, yes, I will talk about that question. So what help is out there? So these are some local resources within our community. So these are all in Sarnia-Lambton. So CMHA, of course. So just to give a quick overview of CMHA, all of our programs are completely free, and they're available to individuals 18 and up. Okay, you do not need a formal diagnosis of anything. So a lot of times people think that they can't reach out to CMHA unless they have seen their doctor first, and that is not the case. So we do serve clients that have been diagnosed, with things like bipolar or depression, but we also serve clients who have never seen a doctor before, but can identify that they are struggling and just need some help. So that might be a really good resource to provide to staff, to let them know that our programs are completely free. In the next slide, I'll just get into how you can connect a staff member to CMHA. Another resource we have in the community is Blue Water Health. So Blue Water Health deals a lot with addiction services and withdrawal management. So I did put their phone numbers there. I have highlighted primary care provider. So not everybody is comfortable with their primary care provider, but this is normally where we kind of direct people if they're struggling as their first kind of line of defense. So if you have that, if you are comfortable with your primary care provider, reaching out to them, and they would be able to actually identify all of these community resources and get you connected or the employee connected to the services that would fit best for them. We have community health centers within our communities. Access Open Minds. So this one that is on the screen is in Chatham. However, I don't know if anyone has heard that we are opening an Access Open Minds here in Sarnia-Lambton. It's going to be located downtown on the corner of Lochiel and Front Street, right across from Coffee Culture. So hopefully we will see that sometime this fall, fingers crossed, and that is a youth hub. So anybody in, aged 11 to 25 can receive support through that. The way that it's been described to me is a Walmart for mental health. So the idea is a youth can walk in and everything is under one roof. So hopefully we will see that in Sarnia opening soon. We also have St. Clair Child and Youth. So they support individuals under 18. We have the Family Counseling Center and Lambton Mental Wellness Center as well. And then I have highlighted the Employee Assistance Program. So as I'm sure many of you are aware of the Employee Assistance Program, but this might be something that you just send out a communication to the staff and let them know that this does exist. Here are the steps that you can get connected. It is completely free and available to employees and their families for mental health support. So this is another resource that I like to mention, and it's called BounceBack Ontario. This is through CMHA, but it is completely virtual. I know a lot of us are kind of sick of the Zoom and virtual, but a lot of people don't feel comfortable reaching out for support in person, and they'd rather do it virtually first. So this is a completely free program, and it is available to anyone aged 15 and up who are dealing with depression and anxiety. So you don't need a referral from a doctor. You just go to bouncebackontario.ca. You can create an account, and it's basically a free skill building program. So it just helps build those skills in dealing with depression and anxiety. It kind of, if anyone has heard of CBT therapy, so cognitive behavioral therapy, it kind of uses some of those techniques to help individuals who are struggling and manage their symptoms. So this might be something, that you send out to employees and let them know that this is completely free and available to anybody virtually. So just connecting with CMHA, if you do, yourself or someone or an employee needs support with their mental health, anyone can refer to CMHA. Okay, so you don't have to be a doctor, family, friend, support, anyone can refer. And the best way to get connected is through this mental health first response team. So a lot of times when people see this, they think it's a crisis number. It is a crisis, but it's not just used for that. It's really used for anybody who wants to get connected. So if you have a staff member who you know is struggling, you can promote this line. It's staffed by mental health professionals, available 24/7, every day of the year, holidays, weekends, you name it. So somebody who might be struggling can reach out to this phone number. They will be greeted by a mental health professional, and from there, they can help them cope with whatever they're going through and then refer them to any service that we have at CMHA. So this is really the best way to get connected to any of our services. So that is it for my presentation, which gives us about 10 minutes for questions, which is great. And so I will make sure that everyone gets this presentation so that you can rewatch the videos. And so we did have a question about the 13 factors that was in that psychological safety.
Sorry,
video.
Taylor, can I just, before you jump into the question, I'm just going to stop the recording.
Oh, yes.
So I just want to let everyone know that you'll be off camera now. So feel free, if you'd like to turn your camera on, unmute and ask a question, or simply put it in the chat.